All right, so we're going to go ahead and get started for the RHU Alumni Career Chat about entertainment media. I am thrilled to welcome our 4 panelists here today. My first question is going to allow them to introduce themselves and tell you a little bit more about their current position that they're in, but here you can see their names and their titles and where they work. So I think I'm going to stop my screen share just so you can have a better view of who's talking to you. So we're going to go ahead and get started with this first question. And for this first question, I'm going to ask each panelist to answer it, and then for the subsequent questions, I will let you jump in and answer it however you would like. So the first question is, please introduce yourself, what you do, and the nature of your job, your current job. And if you've had other jobs in the field leading up to this, feel free to talk about those as well. I think let's go ahead and start with Miriam, if that's okay. Take it away, Miriam.
Hi, everyone. I'm Miriam. I work at Hulu on the marketing team, and I'm a 2008 graduate from the COM school, Arts and Humanities school. And just thinking back, I started working at a creative agency in Maryland, HCDG, if anyone knows that. And from there, I went to Discovery. I was there for 6 years, where I met Brittany, who's also a panelist. And I worked on Animal Planet, Discovery, TLC. I really got great experience working on their creative team alongside marketing strategists, creative strategists to bring campaigns to life. And that experience really set me up well to travel to the West Coast to work at Hulu. And I'm doing the same thing I did at Discovery, but now I work on scripted content, I work on film, I work on the awards campaigns, so Emmys, Golden Globes, SAG, really industry focused creative and messaging. To talk a little bit about Hulu, I work on their creative team, and we call ourselves Greenhouse. And my team really intakes all of the marketing and creative strategy, and we bring those ideas to life. So I work with video editors, assistant editors to develop video content for social, long form content. I work with designers, I work with writers, and we concept develop campaign strategies as well. So really a myriad of creative development that you see out in the world and some of the thinking behind that. And as the project lead on that specific campaign, I will be there from the concepting phase all the way to the delivery of those creative assets. And I work with probably 20, 25 people on any given campaign, and I work on 5 campaigns at a time. So there's high volume of work, and it's high stress, and it's exciting to be in streaming right now. And I'm excited to be here.
Wonderful, thank you so much. I'm going to go by the order of who's showing up on my screen. So I'm going to go to Adam next.
Awesome, thanks, Kate. Thanks for having me. So I graduated in 2017, and I majored in public relations within the COM RHU school. I was really nervous when I was a senior, right? I didn't have a job when I graduated, and maybe many of you, I was like frantic. I had all my friends, they were going to law school. They got, these top jobs that they knew about months and months beforehand. And I'm sitting there at graduation being like, okay, what's gonna happen? And so I ended up moving to New York again without a job. I was just trying to network as much as I could. And I received some advice to work at Caroline's, right? I wanted to be in the comedy space, in the comedy world. So I started, in order to intern for the New York Comedy Festival, I just began waiting tables at a comedy club. So I did that for 3 months, just really grinding, taking the subway home at 2 a.m. What a better introduction to New York City than just, right, eating shit. Excuse my language, but that is what happened. Fortunately, I was able to land a job at College Humor as an executive assistant. And then I was promoted to production coordinator, where I was booking talent for all of our unscripted video podcasts, Unfortunately, in January, College Humor really sort of shut down pre-pandemic. And I was just, freelance producing for a lot of quarantine. I, produce a weekly show on Twitch, which is like a parody of Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, which is super fun. And then actually, and this is news to Kate as well, I just got a job. So I'm super excited. I just got a full-time job at a TikTok competitor. Stay with me, all right? It's called Rizzle. They're headquartered in India, and they have 10 million users, right? So they're somewhat established, and they're really looking to hit the ground running and build their US audience, which is great. And so we're accepting pitches, which is exciting, and it's all right series, scripted and non-scripted based, and I can go into that a little bit later too, but it's just some exciting news, and I'll be joining them as their talent and development manager.
Congratulations, that's wonderful news.
Thank you.
Have late breaking news on panels. Excellent.
Yes.
All right. Next on my screen, I see Brittany.
Hi guys, thank you for joining. I'm Brittany. I work at Netflix in our LA office. I, as Miriam mentioned, also got started at Discovery. We say Discovery, we sort of mean the parent company, but I worked on Animal Planet, TLC for a minute, and then eventually the flagship network as well as Science Channel. I worked in publicity there for our various networks, and the work I do now is quite similar at Netflix, and kind of in addition to Miriam. My role most specifically is promoting our original series. Netflix obviously has grown quite a bit over the years, and we have what we call originals, which are shows produced in-house by Netflix, and we have acquisitions, which are shows we buy or borrow from other networks like Schitt's Creek. And then we have films. We have a very robust film slate now, films that we buy and films that we make in-house. And I work on the team that does full stop publicity services for our series. So really kind of the work that my team does is in complement to marketing, paid marketing, which is, the ads you see and the social media banners and the awards campaigns is sort of one engine that we use for marketing our shows. But publicity, which we call at Netflix sort of earned media as opposed to paid media, publicity really is charged with all of those other functions that you see out in the world that kind of lend impressions to how shows are marketed. Things like magazine covers, appearances on late night shows, appearances on morning shows, interviews with different digital outlets like Refinery29 and Elite Daily and People.com and Entertainment Weekly. Our job also includes a bit of crisis communication, which is always happening in the media landscape. So managing any crises or controversies happening across our shows. It also includes a bit of executive management. We like to help our executives tell important stories about our content, whether that's upcoming slate shows that they're really excited about or business opportunities to attract new creators to come make shows at Netflix. So my individual team is 10 people. We have a range of everyone from assistants to senior publicists, and we are a scrappy team that operates a lot sort of in complement to marketing, but our focus more specifically is across drama series and young adult. So titles like Stranger Things and 13 Reasons Why, The Crown. These are some of the shows that we work on, but we also are sort of breaking in to merge our team right now with what we call Editorial and Publishing. So social is, I think, the former moniker for that, but we're calling it Editorial and Publishing. And that's the team that really handles all of our Netflix social accounts. So, if you follow the brand, you might know at Netflix, but we have a couple other affinity audiences, and my team is really kind of merging in part with that team because social is a really important part to our YA audience. So we are in the process of doing that right now. More to come on that front. But yeah, that's, we really kind of complement marketing in many ways, but our function is very different from the creative side or the paid media side.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. And Ajit.
Thank you, Kate. Hi, everyone. My name is Ajit. I'm from Baltimore, Maryland. I graduated from Maryland a little over a year ago, so in 2019. And I work at HBO. So recently, I actually just got a promotion to coordinator. But essentially, one path up to there was during when I was in your guys' years, when I was interning out here in LA at BET, FX, and then HBO, and then I came back to HBO for a full-time position. It wasn't very direct. I started off as a temp, which I can talk about more, and then went to executive assistant, and then now coordinator. So it's amazing. And, and the department I work in is HBO programming and Warner Media talent development. And what essentially that is I work for HBO Access, and we pipeline in diverse writers and directors into the Warner Media landscape. And we make sure that HBO and its silos stay above 50% for women and people of color who direct and write episodes on HBO. And yeah, that's a short form version of that.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Okay, so my next question is, what advice do you have for students? What hiring strategies are helpful? And if you're willing to share, how did you get your either current job or your first job in the field? And I'm going to let any of you jump in here.
I have a sort of interesting Maryland connection, so I can kick it off. Miriam and I and several other folks that we are sort of close with now, we're all part of a similar intern class at Discovery. This was back when unpaid internships were still legal in many states. This is an important caveat. Very glad now that they're not, by the way. So I was interning at Discovery in college. I was getting on the College Park Metro to go to Silver Spring, rushing through a connection at the Green Line almost every day, it felt like. And at my graduation, I was the class of 2010. Our keynote speaker at the comms graduation was actually a Discovery employee who then became my boss. This is a bit of a spoiler alert, boss and dear friend over the years, but he was the commencement speaker at the comm graduation. And actually right after the graduation, I just went up and introduced myself. I didn't work for him directly. I worked for our corporate communications team at the time, and I was kind of slowly finding out that that world and that role was a bit different than the path that I wanted to pursue. I was really interested in the programming part, and he was head of one of the networks that was working on shows. So it kind of started there. He let me know that he didn't have any openings on his team, but I kind of stayed at him. I was emailing with him. I drove to Silver Spring one day to get coffee with him. He had to cancel at the last minute. I drove back again. I was just sort of, he felt like an obvious sort of in to me, so we stayed with it. And when his admin went out on maternity leave, he offered me a position on the team. So the Netflix job was a bit of a cold outreach by a recruiter, so that one was a little bit more straightforward. But the only piece of advice that I would have is just to put yourself out there. That's very cliche, but it's true. I have outreach from Maryland alumni, both when I was living in Maryland and when I moved to LA. And I love connecting with prospective graduates or graduates to just talk to them about this role in this field, because it's very intimidating. There's not a lot of information online about how to get into media. It certainly wasn't the case when I was there, and it seems that that's still not the case. So having a human connection is sort of your most important asset. I certainly, I don't want to speak for everybody, but I don't mind sort of cold LinkedIn outreach. I find that, you know, a great way to kind of kick things off, but certainly meeting in person post-COVID and just making human connections. I think it's easy to feel like sometimes you just send your resume into an abyss and don't hear back.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think that's a great point.
Take it away, Adam.
Oh no, sorry. I was just going to say that's a great point. Again, utilizing LinkedIn, those second degree connections. You have a friend of a friend that's at Netflix, right? And no, it's obviously reaching out to alumni is such a big part of the career center, and really just being able to utilize your network is so important. Again, for me, I reached out to an alum who told me to work at Caroline's, and then we just kept in touch. And then even at College Humor, there was Maryland. I was working with Maryland alum, and it's just like, they're everywhere. No, it's great. And I think that's something that's getting lost in the shuffle a little bit, especially with COVID. And I know we'll talk more about that, later in the panel, but it's not only important to network with people that are a few years older than you, that have these jobs, but it's also so important to, be connecting with and reaching out to people your own age, right? That want to do what you want to do. And I think that right now, especially when not everything is in person, and if you're a writer or a performer, instead of meeting up in person, you might be going on, all these different Zoom calls. I think it's just so important to stay connected with people that not only go to Maryland, but are interested in what you're interested in, and are at, the same level, same age, all across the country, across the world.
It's like points that Brittany and Adam are making, like the standout to me that's relevant right now is like reaching out cold and actually hearing back. I think that's something certainly I've seen change during COVID, where everyone is behaving in a digital world, and we are so embedded in that world that another 15-minute Zoom conversation with a student is not an overwhelming ask, and don't feel like it is. I think I do think that it's definitely an easier get now that you don't have to like take someone out of an office and meet with them for coffee. Now it's just the cycle that we live in, and people are at home, flexible schedules are very real for us. So I think, me personally, I think I've met with more students and more junior employees than I have ever in my career, just to talk about what the state of the union is in media. And I think Brittany said it best, that to produce an effective originals campaign, there really is no formula, there is no book there, and it's Maryland gives you the foundation of comms theory and advertising and journalism, and this is all of that together. So it's really that experience and making that human connection that gives you the on-the-job training or insight that you can take into an interview, that brings that extra detail. I'm like, oh, that person knows what they're talking about, they've done their research, they've talked to other people in the industry, because that is priceless. Because we know that if you're working with talent, that's a different ecosystem than working as an intern, just in an office setting. Like, those are skills that you build over time, and that is something that only talking to people in the industry will give you insight into.
I agree. And I just want to go for what Brittany said. I had a similar experience about kind of getting into the industry. When I was a freshman, I knew, I was like, okay, how am I going to do this? I'm Indian and I'm from Baltimore. I had no one, there's no connection there to the entertainment industry. And I always known, that's what I wanted to do. And when I was a freshman in college, I was constantly reaching out to, producers in DC, or just, getting on whatever I can. But my real end came from when I had to attend an etiquette dinner at UMD. And I met my mentor there, and she was hosting it. And I remember her saying, I work at BET, this is what I do, this is what I do. And my head turned around so quickly, and I was like, I have to know her. And, you know, it became a point where I was like, there's 100 kids here. She literally wrote her cell phone number on the wall. I'm like, you know, this is be crazy. I waited till the end. I spoke to her, and she looked at me for a second. I'm like, oh, did I say something wrong? But she's like, you know, give me a call back this on 3rd. We can kind of discuss, you know, what you want to do. And, you know, I called her about 3-4 times, and kind of similar to, you know, Brittany's experience. She was like, hey, I'm busy right now, I can't talk. Hey, I'm busy right now, I can't talk. Hey, I'm busy right now, I can't talk. And it wasn't that she was being rude or short, but, you know, when you're asking someone for their time, you know, it's very important that you respect it. And she was like, okay, kid, what do you want? And then, you know, the first thing she told me was, you were the only kid out of hundreds who called me. And she wrote her personal cell phone number up there, and she could have, you know, she's very well connected, and she could change the lives for many. And, you know, it's taking that chance, and if you're very passionate about it, to really, you know, go after that. I knew I wanted to work at entertainment, and I knew I needed someone to kind of guide me, because I didn't have that person. I was kind of just like in a lost abyss. And from there, I worked at, you know, connecting entertainment executives with the Obama administration at that time. And then it led on to me working at BET and et cetera. But in that time, I think, you know, when you're in college, you're really doubtful and you don't really see things through. And it was something I had to come over, a lot of fear and a lot of, you know, just have positive reaffirmations, kind of understand that, you know, everything's be okay as long as you put hard work in, and, you know, you have a name for yourself in a way. And I think that touches on my other point. You know, if you're in college now, you know, continue to create your art, continue to research, do your research about the industry. If you want to be in that creative field, whether it's programming, development, or you want to be a writer or director, it's very important that, you know, at your age, just, you know, kind of build your narrative. And it doesn't mean you have to have the best, you know, amazing pieces, but I remember when executives were, you know, reaching out to me and we were talking, they were like, so what do you do? You know, like, they want to know your personal narrative and who you are, and, you know, continue doing that for yourself, and continue learning about the industry, continue reading scripts or whatever interests you. And yeah, and I won't stress the alumni, you know, networking thing, because that is obviously very important of who you have. And the other thing is, like Adam said, keep your peers close, and, you know, keep them as friends, and do this genuinely. You know, don't go out to someone and be like, oh, I need a job. You know, it's very important that you're interested in, you know, what they do, and, you know, you can learn a lot from them.
And like the anecdote that Brittany gave earlier about keeping, it kind of connects this story and even why I'm here. Like, Brittany and I met at Discovery, and she mentioned like the group that we are now embedded in here. There's about 12 of us that worked at Discovery. We were there at the same time. We basically grew up within those walls in Silver Spring together, and now we're all in LA across Netflix, Hulu, Amazon, Discovery. So we've taken that connection and we've really brought it to the West Coast, but we're also friends. So there's that angle to it. But what brought us together initially was definitely keeping in touch and learning about the industry together and taking tips and tricks from each other. And it's just become a fruitful friendship over time. But yes, definitely keep in touch with the people that you either go to school with or work with now, because you never know where they'll be.
I'm going to take that a step further and say what actually brought us together in a physical capacity was the employee resource group that we had. I see Miriam cringing a little bit. Within companies that you'll go on to work for, some of them may have employee resource groups, which are like affinity groups within the company for people to connect. So like Working Moms of Discovery, we have a Pride group at Netflix, we have a group called Black at Netflix. This specific group was for young professionals we called it Gen D, like Generation Discovery, which is like super cringy, but Miriam was the leader of this group and pulled a co-leader with another one of our friends and started pulling in some of us for these different committee heads I was professional development with another friend of ours, Curtis, and then there was a service group and a marketing group, and kind of like our own little mini organization. But what the things that we focused on as a group, as like early professionals, were like, you know, even while we were there, can somebody look at my LinkedIn page? Should we bring someone in to do like headshots, like things like that, that you're just kind of building these blocks yourself on how to kind of get to the next level of your career. You know, are you subscribing to these trade organizations? Do you guys like personally have a subscription to the New York Times or Time Magazine or whatever it is? Like, we were sharing that information amongst ourselves. And I don't think that practice starts when you get hired. I think you can do it now. Really just kind of meeting with other people, as both Adam and Ajit said, that have similar interests to you, that are working towards the same goals.
Mm-hmm.
That's excellent. Oh, I'm sorry. That's excellent advice.
It's amazing that that's true. There's an Instagram account with our photos, like
go back in time.
playing kickball, out, you know, in our professional development meetings. It's hilarious.
Generation D.
I love it.
Cringy.
Adam, can I put you on the spot to talk a little bit about the junior, I'm going to say it wrong, Junior Hollywood Society?
Radio, TV Society,
Left out some words.
JHRTS, yes, of course. So when I was a student at Maryland, I attended one panel it was led by the president at the time of the Junior Hollywood Radio and TV Society. This is a bi-coastal organization, right, in New York and LA. And really, because of COVID, it's national, right? And there's even an academic chapter, which I can talk about now. But it's a networking organization for professionals that work in entertainment, which is great. There's different levels, right? I'm actually the co-president of the JHRTS, the junior level, which is like assistants and coordinators, which is great. But there's even an academic level where you can really start networking with colleagues all over the country, and attend different panels, right? Like this, except, they have panels. I mean, at least last year in person, I did a panel. I was in a panel with like Ronnie Chang from The Daily Show. And, we also had a panel last year with Carter Bays, like co-creator of How I Met Your Mother, right? I got to learn all these crazy facts about How I Met Your Mother, like such a great show. But no, so JHRTS, I'll give Kate some links after this to distribute, but it is just an awesome organization where you can get ahead, right? And you can start networking with people that are, right, that have similar interests and that are, your age across the country, which is awesome. And, to kind of piggyback off of what, Miriam and Brittany were getting at with, reading trade or magazines, like obviously it's so important, but it's really important to also, know what your interests are, right? Because entertainment is so big, but if you know that you love unscripted TV and reality TV, then really honing in on that specific niche and being very, very knowledgeable about that. And again, reaching out to people that are in that niche as well, I think is going to be super beneficial.
Great, thank you so much. I see a lot of great questions coming into the chat. So I think I'm going to ask one more question, and then I'm going to kick it over to Kevin to go through some of the prepared questions from the audience. So my last question, and I know none of you work in an HR capacity, but I'm just curious if you can talk a little bit, even if it's broadly, about the types of internships and jobs that exist with your organization and how students can learn more and apply for those types of opportunities.
I can start. The Hulu Internship program is amazing, and this summer we had virtual interns work with us, and we have them hired across every single discipline. So that's within marketing, within product, tech, our talent organization, and then within those subgroups as well. And it's a paid internship and you're offered housing, but didn't obviously offer that. And it's the interview process is tough, because there are a lot of applicants, and I mean, our hiring rate is very slim. However, we do, it's a good process to learn because it's like getting any job, actually. So what we call is, you're taken through an interview loop where you interview with 5 people, which mirrors the same interview process that we have for our full-time employees. So that's what makes it, challenging, but also that's what it's like in the real world. And all of that is on our website. And we moved away from hiring fall interns, but some groups still hire spring interns, but our primary focus is in the summertime.
Discovery has an extremely robust internship program. I remember this URL, I think it's burned into my mind, careers.discovery.com. I think there's even now a separate landing page for the internship program. Obviously incredibly immersive, another focus on summer for full-time internships. And I'm not sure presently kind of what they do, but it is a very well-organized and really important part of the company that hires a lot of entry-level talent. Netflix does not have a formalized internship program. We did experiment with some interns in certain disciplines for the first time this summer, but most of the roles available at Netflix are either admin positions, which I highly recommend you keep your mind open to. I think like the inclination when you're coming out of college is that you want to jump into your field, and sitting across the desk that I sat at for the first person that I worked for gave me actually probably more exposure to other teams, other executives, the ins and outs of the business, which I frankly knew nothing about. It just was a really awesome sort of entry point. So mostly admin positions or coordinator roles across our teams, but also available every open role is available online. Another fun fact, if there's anybody whose home base is international, we have offices in LA, London, Amsterdam, and Singapore. So throw that out for any international folks.
I'm not too sure about the internship kind of land space right now. I know we're taking virtual interns, but I'll let you guys know that now that we're under like Warner Brothers, TNT, TBS, HBO, we're all under one company, so Warner Media now. I think all of our internship and full-time, part-time hires are under Warner Media Careers. And if it's not, you can definitely look at the different silos websites, but it's amazing. And definitely as you're applying, look at who, the alumni that, graduated from UMD, where they work, and kind of set up generals and informationals about, kind of what they do. And just like, hey, just throw in there, I applied, I'm really excited about this, and go from there. But definitely check out the Warner Media website or the HBO website for any careers.
So for Rizzle, which is just a fun thing to say, right? For Rizzle, maybe our marketing campaign. But no, for Rizzle, this new app, right? I see one opportunity on LinkedIn for a data entry internship, but I think something that might be a lot more exciting is that we run a ton of contests, right? And that's something that I can even just throw in the chat. But these contests, right, you can record 10 1-minute long episodes of a certain series, and you can win up to $400, which is awesome. And there's a ton of different contests, and I'm going to, Kate and I are going to connect offline. I'm also going to, connect with probably the film department and maybe Michael Olmert. If anyone here knows Michael Olmert, right, from the English department, screenwriting, English, anybody? We're going to connect about possibly, having sort of these Rizzle contests be even part of a loose curriculum, right? An optional way to maybe get extra credit or even get some cash, because that's awesome. So that's super exciting, and look out for more info about that.
I have one more thought on this, and I'm sharing this something hindsight because it's definitely not something I did. But there are so many partners that work with pieces of our business, personal publicity agencies like PMK and Shelter PR and IDPR, all these individual agencies that rep talent. There's also, of course, like the talent agencies. Some of you probably have heard of CAA or UTA or those types of businesses. And I would also encourage you to look into internships available at sort of these peripheries of these networks or these media companies, because all of those folks are, contributing to the work happening at, studios and networks. It's also, we're connected to them every day. I'm in the middle of this call, I've probably gotten 6 or 7 texts from reps. So I think like these are people that we are working with in a really close capacity. So if you're not finding something at maybe the network or studio that you want to do, look into these partner organizations that represent other parts of the business. Production companies is another one. And then one last thought. This is a very tactical thing, but I appreciate when I get outreach on LinkedIn when the person who is reaching out, especially if they're a recent grad, has a bit about what they're looking for, either in their profile or in their header even, like seeking, entry-level PR roles or seeking entry-level production coordinator roles. It's just sort of an easy finger swipe for me to kind of know who to direct them to. If it's not myself, it's somebody else on my team or in my business, Discovery, Netflix, or in my network. I kind of know what to do with that incoming, and I find it very helpful.
All right, fantastic. I think some of the incoming questions have gone to Kevin and some have gone to me. Kevin, I'm going to let you take it away with the first question, and I'm going to be looking through the questions I received as well.
Okay, sounds good. So yeah, thank you everyone for submitting your questions. There are some really good ones. And I think to kind of piggyback off of what the panelists were just talking about, we have a question from Samantha Eddy, which is, what advice do you have for students who don't know yet exactly what position they'd like to have within the entertainment industry? In other words, what kind of jobs or internships might give you the opportunity to explore?
I think that's an interesting question because I entered the entertainment industry thinking, okay, you're an actor, director, writer. That's it, And I was very naive to think that. And when I went to my first studio job at FX, I was like, oh my gosh, there's like millions of jobs. And, as you can see on this panel, we all kind of work in different spaces. And I started to become unsure. I'm like, oh, do I do this? Do I want to do that? Do I want to do this? And, like I think Brittany was saying before, having an interest in mind is very important when reaching out to someone and not, kind of have too many lost thoughts. But how I kind of navigated that was that year when I was applying to internships at FX, I had gone through the whole list of Warner Brothers, I was interviewing and I didn't receive anything back. And it was June and the internship deadline was cutting off, but I heard back from FX. And I knew I wanted to be in a more creative space, whether it was programming or development. But this internship had kind of aligned with past internship I did with social media. And this was a digital internship at FX. And though it wasn't really aligned with what I wanted to do, I knew that I would learn a lot because I didn't have a clear idea of exactly what I wanted to pinpoint on, but I knew this would get me, into something that I wanted to learn, and I took a chance on it. And during that internship, I really spoke to my boss and conveyed that I wanted to stay on the creative side and thought this was very interesting. And she constantly told me like, go meet this person, go to these events, and really start doing research and really start understanding where you're working, and take those meetings with someone in program, or who does PR, or who works on a set, or the production coordinator, and you start learning about more and more of these roles. And once you get your in, you're like, oh, this is interesting. So I can, I have a better subset of knowing what I want to do. And when you go to your next internship, you can apply to that. So I think just putting yourself out there and finding one interest that you think that you may be good at, and that takes research. So when you go on Hulu's website or HBO's, you'll see all these different names. You're like, what does this mean? Like, what does someone programming do? What does someone in marketing do? What does someone in BA do? What you do is just start doing some research, and if you find it interesting, apply and see. If it's definitely about if you're interested in it, and kind of jump into it with an open mind, and from there, getting that experience and being around that environment, you'll definitely kind of you start moving along.
Yeah, I would add that I think that working at a talent agency, I've never done it, but I just hear that working at a talent agency, you're exposed to so much, right? You can see so many parts of how the industry works. So that's definitely one route to go. I think the same could be said for working at a talent management company. If you know that you want to be sort of involved with talent, even if you don't know what you'd want to do in the industry, it helps to know, what do you like? What do you like to watch? What do you like to read, right? What's driving your even just remote interest in entertainment? Do you like silly comedies, right? Do you like dramas? So that's something to consider. And then I wanted to say this also about the sort of when we were talking about internships, but it's, we were just talking about how some internship programs have closed. And, the reality is that obviously careers in entertainment, especially entry level, right? It's a ton of people trying to get only a certain amount of positions. And then with, add COVID, and it is a shit show, right? And it's really, really hard. And so sometimes it's so important to think about what is in your control, right? As a creator, what can you be doing to, right, further yourself on this career path that you want, and that is, again, connecting with people that your own age and trying to refine your own craft. I mean, I signed up this summer for masterclass, right? It's $180 for 12 months, unlimited classes, right? I started taking Judd Apatow's class, and now I can learn how to cook and sew if I want. Like, there's so many things you can be doing that it's, besides just, okay, cold reach out, LinkedIn, trying to network, because again, it burns you out, and you have to remind yourself why you have this burning desire, this burning interest in the first place.
And something I would say that I didn't ever really think about when I was first applying to jobs or internships or meeting with people was asking about or thinking about what I looked for in a manager. Because when you are so junior or young in your career, that manager makes the difference. Like Brittany that was the difference between her getting that full-time role and from her internship. So making sure that, you have some sort of understanding of like your learning style, and, you've just come out of school, and like a good reference to that is analyzing a bit, like, what was my relationship with my most successful relationship with my teacher that I loved? And that you can really transfer to and bring that understanding to your first relationship with your manager. Because in these organizations, just knowing like how the corporate structure can be, you kind of take on that identity of what your manager is and who they are, and what they find important, because you are a coordinator or an admin. So you want to make sure that you align with those beliefs, because a lot of that work, because you go in kind of as a generalist, you're going to be doing so much and tapping into whatever is important to that manager and what they find stressful, and how you can, riff off of that stress and how to relieve that stress for that manager. And that's kind of like the first ecosystem that you live in. Like, it's like your manager and then your other entry level cohorts. And then your world expands into taking on employee resource group responsibilities and taking on more like a leadership role within that project, but all of that kind of is delegated to you at that level. So you want to make sure that when you're in those conversations, you're asking, like, what is your managing style? When was the last time that you promoted somebody on your team, and why did you promote them? Why didn't you promote them? Those are really important to kind of honing in on, going from a generalist to absorbing it all and then finding something that you really like. You want to work on that more and more and more. And the way these corporate structures are, that kind of approval sometimes comes from your manager. So, because that person is delegating to you. And, I think like at Hulu, it's very flexible, but at Discovery and my first job at an agency, it was very much that model. So I never thought about how important that would become to advancement.
Those are excellent points. So kind of along those lines, I have a couple questions about screenwriting. So if a student is interested in breaking into the screenwriting world, what advice do you have for them?
Sure. So first, it helps to just read a lot of scripts of, whether it's stuff that you love, your favorite stuff, or an awesome resource to check out is something called the Blacklist, and it's spelled Blacklist without vowels. And I can send that to Julie so she can pop that in the chat. But Blacklist is just a list of all of the, and Miriam was shaking her head, yes, and I just want to make sure I pitch this right, but it's all of the screenplays that haven't been produced yet, right? That are by these like top screenwriters that, maybe aren't even represented by an agent. And, the Blacklist is great because it's seen by a ton of industry, and, managers and agents are scouring it, being like, oh, like who's got the hottest new script that everyone wants to read. And really, I think it's so important, at least in college, to know, right, the structure and the format of a screenplay. And buying like the Hollywood Handbook is just, it's the first step you need to do in order to, right, know how, obviously it helps to know how to break story and to, storyboard your ideas, but getting down the format, getting the fundamentals down is so important. And I also want to defer to the rest of the panelists here.
So I'm not, like, when I call myself a creative, I live and breathe in the marketing side of the creative development, and Adam's living in like the content development creative. I want to make sure that difference is understood. And I think I have that passion for creativity. And I took a screenwriting class at Georgetown just in my free time. It was Screenwriting 101. And, frankly, I didn't do much with it beyond that, but it was a skill I wanted to learn. And I will say in almost every single interview that I'm in, they're like, wow, you took a screenwriting class. That's really exciting. What did you do with that? And I'm like, well, my passion is really in like marketing, creative development, but it made me a more well-rounded applicant because I was hopping in and out of ancillary parts of the industry. And I don't know if Maryland has a screenwriting class now.
So go ahead, Kate.
You can take it. Go for it.
No, I was going to say that I took one right when I graduated, right, 3 years ago. One by Michael Olmert, one by Douglas Kern, all in the English department. I'm not sure if the film studies has sort of expanded and also included that. But that's Doug Kern and Michael Olmert. I took an Aaron Sorkin screenplay class with Michael Olmert, and that was like the coolest thing, right? In
Was
the
it the
world.
master class one?
So no, right?
Oh.
It was the same, like the master class came out that summer, and then Michael Olmert had a class where he's like, we're gonna read all of his screenplays, and we're going to write, the final project is you write your own screenplay. That doesn't have to be inspired by Sorkin, but it has to be, people need to walk and talk, people need to at least get that ball rolling.
I also have a masterclass membership, and there's an Aaron Sorkin screenwriting class that I took, and I took it for a totally different reason. I don't see screenwriting in my future, even though I love to write, but I wanted to know how to be able to talk to my creators about their craft. As someone that prepares a lot of directors and writers and producers for interviews, I wanted to really understand how to dig in. One of the areas that my focus touches on is awards, and I need to know how to kind of coach them into the right opportunities for awards. So I took that Aaron Sorkin class on Masterclass, and it was great.
I feel like I'm fortunate enough. You guys are in a really good spot right now to continue learning about screenwriting, because it's something that I look back at now. I was like, wow, I wish I did that in college. But kind of going with what Adam said, read as many scripts as you can. And one thing my boss told me recently that really hit me, I was like, wow, that's actually a great thing to do. When you're dissecting a script, this might be a lot of work, but you transcribe it. So when you're reading it, you're kind of writing it on the side, because you're seeing, oh, why did they why did they use that? What does this convey about the character? You're mentally being you're putting yourself into the script, and you're writing it over, and you're seeing why those decisions were made. And kind of our program that I work with deals with developing writers and directors, and one thing we find really important is your personal narrative. Who are you as a person, and how can you incorporate some of that into your script? How can you tell your own story? And sometimes it's about really doing a deep dive into yourself. And also just looking at what you're interested in. Like, are you interested in genre, like psychological thrillers, this, that, and the third? But now is a great time for you guys to take a dive into that. And I remember I was speaking to an executive, and he's like, oh, sounds like you want to be a writer. And I was like, oh no. It's so, kind of dabble into each of your interests. If writing is one, if creating is one, do it. Continue writing. And it's a habit that you have to build, even if it's like a sentence a day. And continue learning from people who are showed you on a master class, or even your peers. I took a screenwriting class in college. I think it was the same one that Adam said, with Doug Kern, and it was amazing. It was just I mean, none of the stuff was really great, but it was great because you're around a community that, I apologize. You're around a community. Sorry guys. You're around a community that really wanted to really learn and create.
And I will just throw out there, I'm hoping in the spring to have a one-on-one conversation on Zoom with a screenwriter in LA. He's tentatively agreed. We just have to pick a date. So if you're interested in that, stay tuned. I'm going to turn it over to Kevin for another question.
Great. And what I will say before this question too is that we've gotten so many great questions that unfortunately I don't think we're going to be able to get to all of them before we have to wrap up. And so one thing that I just want to bring up now before we get into a more in-depth question is that I think it would be great for the panelists to maybe share, how they'd like to be contacted by students, if you're willing to be contacted, because I know that you all have very busy lives, and if you have a preferred form of communication, if you could share that, that'd be fantastic.
LinkedIn. I love connecting with people on LinkedIn, and it also, I can learn a bit more about you and, internships that you've had and areas of interest. I try my very best to get back to everybody on LinkedIn. But yeah, LinkedIn for sure. I'm looking forward to doing that with all of you.
LinkedIn for me as well.
LinkedIn's great. And then for creators, video creators, I'm going to give my work email. Exciting stuff. Just because, you know, we're definitely looking to, you know, we're accepting pilots for, again, these 10, right, 1 minute long series ideas, both scripted and unscripted. And I'll give Kate more info on that too.
Yeah, feel free to message me on LinkedIn. I think that's the best route.
Awesome. Thank you all. So sounds like LinkedIn is probably the best way across the board, which is great. And so another question that came up that I think is a great question for anyone in any career field. It's from Benjamin Sarpong. The question is, what is your favorite part of your job, and what is something that maybe is more challenging as part of your job?
My favorite part of my job is working with new talent that's new to the business and new to the industry. I have this feeling of kind of when I stepped into the job that I love now, and I am really invigorated to wake up every day for. And part of the sort of excitement for this talent is both learning about the business and, of course, wanting to succeed, but just being open and moldable to recommendations and watching them kind of go through the stages of being on set and performing their craft to media training to talking about their show and promoting their work. It's just really exciting for me. And I've always benefited from amazing mentors. And I try to channel that a bit as I'm guiding new talent into the space. Maybe not that I didn't like it, but that I struggled with, and this is a good lesson to sort of balance your skills a bit. This is very specific, but at Discovery, one of the jobs that I had on the team was writing and distributing ratings releases. It's very important to cable networks to publicize their ratings. Sometimes you'll hear this like, I don't know, 2 million people watch the premiere of X network, and there's a very intricate rating system, but it's very heavy on numbers. These are numbers that are really important to the networks and to the ad sales division, but I'm pretty sure I think I took a stat class at Maryland, but thankfully had fulfilled my math requirements before I got there, but continues to be an area I struggle in. And it was probably one of the more challenging things that I've had to do. But definitely important to kind of balance those skills, writing, you know, connecting with executives, and definitely a little math snuck in there.
I think,
So,
sorry. I think, going off what Brittany said, for me as well, it's just great seeing diverse talent being pipelined into this big studio, and, you know, HBO and, you know, Warner Media. It was exciting when we, you know, people were getting their first staff writing jobs, when they're getting their first episode to direct the first episode. It was amazing, and it was very inspiring because I had felt at times like, oh, I was the only person kind of doing it. I was like the first one who had to like make the lead for others, like, you know, being Indian and from Baltimore. I didn't really see no one like me, but, you know, in these programs, you get to see great talent that are, you know, that's amazing. And being part of that is great. And another thing about just the entertainment industry is just meeting people. Once you know, get into your positions, you're gonna see a lot of people are like, let's go grab drinks. And you know, being, not now, the more it's over Zoom like this, but beforehand, it's, you know, meeting people, and you get to just connect with amazing people, and they're from all over the world, and just, you know, getting to know more about them. The challenging part for me when I first started was kind of navigating the corporate structure. And what I mean by that is knowing basic, when you first get into this industry, you're probably going to be an assistant, and understanding how to roll calls, how to, you know, having, you know, email format, and just knowing how to write is very important, and understanding how to work around your boss. It's a great thing to have, and it was something that I had to learn as I went along. And I always say I'm going to create a booklet for people, because I was like, no one should just have to, like, this should just be given to everyone to, you know how to do this. And I like to make things easier for even my, like, you know, interns that we had at HBO. It was, I just always wanted to like teach. So that was one thing, learning, you know, your basic duties when you're first getting in there, so you could spend more time on doing more other things that, you know, they could work on more on the creative side, but yeah.
Yeah, I'll add to that one of the challenges that I faced, especially coming right out of college, is I'd want to, right, I was like a networking extraordinaire. Like, you'll ask Kate, I was emailing her every day, like, all right, we got to do this. Like, Kate, we have to get me a job. Like, we like, this is now Kate's responsibility now. And one of the things that I really struggled with, yeah, one of the things I really struggled with is like, okay, great, I'm reaching out to these people and I'm asking for advice, I'm asking about, you know, knowledge in the industry, but what can I do for them? Which again, as a student or a recent graduate, you might think like, oh, there's nothing that I could provide to someone that already has a job, that already is in their 20s or 30s, right? And sort of, you know, doing their own thing in the professional world. But you can, because even if just sharing, you know, podcasts that you like that they might not have even heard of, or, you know, TV shows. Obviously, if you say like, I love Schitt's Creek, the person you're talking to is not going to be like, cool, what's that? But, you know, sharing different really cool podcasts, like, you know, really cool web series that you found online, even just like, you know, like TikTok, Rizzle, whatever, like different creators online that maybe not are super, that might not be super known, but just to be like, hey, like, I noticed that you're in comedy, like, you know, you should definitely check out X creator. You know, a quick anecdote about that is I connected, again, just by cold email when I was in college. I connected with one of the head writers for Workaholics, the TV show. And again, I like loved Workaholics, and I was so happy that he answered my cold email, and I wrote a spec script of Workaholics that was 27 pages, and he gave me feedback, which, first off, that's crazy and never expect that, right? Like, that's amazing. This guy, his name's Scotty Landis. He's hilarious. You know, it's great. And to thank him, I was like, what can I do for him? And so I wrote like a profile on him, right? I interviewed him, and this is when I was in college. I wrote, you know, maybe 1,000 words on him. And then he like shared it on like Facebook and LinkedIn. And all of a sudden you had these people come out of the woodworks that he's known that were like, oh, Scotty, I didn't know you did this, and that. Like, it was something that, you know, I struggled with. How can I also, you know, scratch their back in a sense? And I think it's providing, you know, these people that you're meeting with like, okay, these are my interests. I know you like this. These are some things that I found online and that I love, and that maybe not everyone even knows about. So I feel like that could be helpful as well.
That's fantastic. I want to be mindful of our panelists' time because I know you have very, very busy lives. I have one last question I want to ask because a couple of different people asked it. Do you need to relocate to the West Coast? What are your thoughts about location in this field? Are there certain cities that you would recommend? What do you think?
I'll go first because I've heard very opposed views on this. But I think, like, hey, if you want to write, if you want to direct, if you, you know, kind of want to be in it, I think it's important to be where that is centered. And, you know, a lot of it is, you know, in Hollywood, a lot of it is in LA. And I understand it can be difficult. I mean, you know, I think, you know, even during college, I had to pay my way. Like, you know, I wasn't provided housing, you know, I was doing an internship. It was doing that. So at times it was difficult, and some companies don't, you know, pay you enough to move, but it's kind of working around that. But I think it's very important, if this is something you want to do and you want to be in it, I think you should, you know, make the move. And I think New York and LA are the two main spots, but, you know, see where the shows are being made, see what's happening. And I had to make the move, and I'm not upset about it. It was more so about navigating, you know, how do you pay? How do you adjust to moving to a new city that you don't know anyone in, and, you know, kind of cultivating that community. But I think it's important if you do want to jump into this industry and you're interested in it, I say do it, you know? But yeah.
I would say that pre-COVID, you know, you got to be in New York or LA, maybe Chicago if you are a comedy person, and I mean, even if you're a comedy person, sorry, like New York and LA is where to be. Right now, especially seniors that are graduating, even juniors, you know, now that we're in this world, like stay at home, you know, you know, be with your parents, right? Like don't move to New York or LA. Like, I mean, it's hard to say don't do that, but you know, while we're still like in lockdown and in the pandemic, I really advise against, you know, moving to one of these cities, because it's going to be really hard to make friends. You're going to be like paying your way, and then everything that you would be doing is still virtual and online. So I would really like wait this out a little bit before making the jump to New York or LA. But once things start opening up and it's really safe to, you know, go to shows and mingle and like, you know, be there in person on a very social level, then definitely go to New York or LA.
Yeah, I disclaimer, I didn't mean to say move right now, but you know, definitely a lot of productions are shut down, and work on that side is a bit slow. It's kind of ramping up a little bit, but it's kind of scattered. But yeah, don't move during COVID.
Yeah, I would just say that moving to a place, New York or LA, is a big decision, and it will not instantly materialize a job that you haven't otherwise connected to. But one thing that you should know is there are media industries in so many cities now outside of New York and LA. Atlanta is a booming film economy. We love going to Atlanta. Obviously DC, there's a ton of news here, political news mostly, but a ton of news companies with a hub in DC. Agree with Adam, Chicago is a great scene for comedy. If there's anybody from the East Coast of Canada, Toronto is also a very big film industry. So I would be happy to kind of guide anybody who's from those home cities and kind of talk about what I know personally is available there. But I love California. If you come, I'd love to get coffee with you. I think it's the kind of thing where what led me there was not the desire to be in a certain space or be in a certain industry. It was falling in love with this opportunity that I had. It came at a very weird time. I had just gotten engaged in 2015. I had just bought a house. I was very grounded in Baltimore. I grew up there, and I felt like this was a massive choice for me to make, and I've been very happy there. But yeah, there's definitely opportunities in other cities for sure.
Miriam, I'm going to give you the last word.
Oh, wow. I mean, for me, me moving out here was the caveat to getting the job and not. So, but that was 3 years ago, and we are in a very, very different professional climate. So that was my experience. And I think even now, you know, the thriving industries, media industries in these other cities are growing at a rapid pace, if not embedded already. So yeah, although LA and New York are the hubs, there's massive opportunity even in DC. Like documentary film and unscripted series are, you know, even just with, you know, what's happening in the world, like that is the center of where those stories are and where those people are. And that is very much entertainment. It's not like the documentary field and how those stories are told are of equal entertainment value than like a box office hit, because it's just as salacious, it's just as important, and it's relevant to all of our lives. And I mean, the documentary series and films that are on Netflix like are so, and I mean, my personal favorites on Netflix as content offering are those. And And I just think and that's where those filmmakers live and breathe. And I don't want to discount that just because like the hub of that is LA. You know, it's right in your backyard and you just have to look for it. I do love living in LA. I'll be honest. I grew up in Maryland, in Montgomery County, and went to school at Maryland and lived in DC proper after. I mean, I love DC. It's such an underrated center of culture in the world. And, you know, it's so much fun. And now there's the opportunity to like work in media at a production company or freelance. Like the opportunities are there, when I was your age, I mean, it was way more structured. It was Discovery or Nat Geo. And now it's just the freelance culture makes you a global citizen. So don't discount that either.
All right, wonderful. I'm going to share my screen one more time here to show you just some upcoming or some things you might want to be aware of. We do have this ebook you can check out all about media and entertainment jobs. You should be able to access it through that direct link. It's also, you can access it through Careers for Terps. So for students who want to learn a little bit more about different job titles and just more information about the industry, that can be helpful. Just a reminder, you can always schedule appointments through Careers for Terps to work on finding internships, jobs, even discussing entering the field that you learned about today. In terms of events, we are still doing Intern for a Day. It used to be an in-person job shadowing experience. Now we connect you to professionals for informational interviews virtually. And so that's going on right now. You can sign up for an orientation session, and then you tell us your top 8 choices and we match you with a host to conduct an informational interview. We have confirmed a virtual career shuttle, basically an online information session with National Geographic. It's going to be on November 13th. I don't have the registration open quite yet, but it will be coming soon. Because it's virtual, we have an unlimited number of spots, which is great. And also, we work with an organization called the Eastern Association of Colleges and Employers. And these were road trips. You might have heard about them in past years where you would go and visit employers. They're all going to be virtual in January. National Geographic will be hosting for that, as well as Horizon Media, and perhaps a few as well. So there are all sorts of ways you can get more information about the entertainment media field. So I'm going to stop my share here. I just want to thank our panelists so much for spending your morning with us if you're on the West Coast. Can we all give a virtual round of applause? Really appreciate your insight and your stories and your advice. It's so helpful for students to see fellow Terps, fellow Arhu Terps in a lot of cases who have gone on to do great things. So thank you all so much. I really appreciate it. I'm going to stop the record here.